All right, so welcome to episode 3. Where are the aliens? This is about reflecting on our spiritual and genetic heritage and what those words even mean, perhaps in both our inherited traditional language, but also maybe what that might imply on a greater scientific level in terms of, words that perpetuate through society often carry several levels of meaning. And today we're going to talk deeply about this. So, for many of you, my name is Kyle Damon. I'm a project leader and co-founder at Elevated Executive. I'm making this video series for mental health advocacy and harm reduction purposes. If you or somebody you know is suffering from mental health challenges, there is help, and I encourage you to take the first step either for yourself or for a loved one. There are resources in the description for you to consider. This series is about evolving our minds to keep up with the rapid pace of societal evolution and what I assert is the positive planetary future we may actually be headed toward. And yes, this includes reconciling the past 40 years of scientific information that has been collected about the extraterrestrial presence on planet Earth, allegedly. At the same time, however, I see smart people around the world in communities we are all part of that are struggling to understand how diet, exercise, nutrition, and even economic relevance all must fit into a sustainable future. In the previous video, we discussed and mapped the likely social pressures that open contact and potential governmental acknowledgement of the extraterrestrial presence on Earth, and perhaps within our genetics, may have on how our societies are governed and structured, including how we define economics and productivity. Even as I write this, after studying the extraterrestrial presence on planet Earth since I was a teenager, I still see very few so-called experts consider what might lie ahead. This is a topic I call the unseen implications of disclosure, something several years in the making that had culminated into this series, so as usual, we're going to go deep and consider how this subject is likely to rock the foundations of some of our most entrenched assumptions about the reality we all share. And if we can somehow release the panic and superstition we are collectively facing, we are approaching a miraculous convergence of science, healing, and spirituality. And yes, of course, today, there is this persistent social idea that governments should probably come clean about what they know to their people so we can begin to discuss and decide what the implications of the extraterrestrial presence on our planet and potentially in our genetics imply about their technology and their messages that they share. So yes, I'm speaking directly about the profound messages many contactees claim to have received over the last 4 decades. As the series continues, I will discuss in greater detail what these stories imply, but as far as I can tell, many of these races have been seeding and cultivating this planet for hundreds of thousands of years, allegedly. So, by the conclusion of this video, you are going to have a carefully constructed summary of the primary message many of these races carry. And what I've come to understand is meant to serve as a type of planetary test or catalyst for our species to decide if we are able to graduate into a higher dimensional understanding of the reality we all share. In the last episode, we specifically discussed how the U.S. government's alleged recent acknowledgement to prominent religious leaders about their understanding of the ongoing extraterrestrial hybridization program and how this knowledge may specifically and perhaps disproportionately impact people of faith, especially those with deeply entrenched religious or ideological beliefs. We also discussed that at this time, I feel we must all strive to identify and reflect on the values of our inherited, pre-internet cultural belief systems, and use our compassion as a compass and perspective to help the more backward communities unwind their perhaps more violent justifications and superstitions that drive violence. In that sense, a person is only usually violent to the degree that they feel separated and that their voice and needs are not being heard. To me, I sense this pressure will perhaps be amplified even more when people in societies are confronted with broader and perhaps more ancient cosmic truths about our heritage and our lineages that may render certain earth-based religions and belief systems as incomplete or outdated. This includes considering what many identify as a more scientifically involved conclusion about how energy is harnessed and distributed to create and share various resources on planet Earth. This is something that many contactees discuss having learned about during their contact experiences, and well, I don't think it's wise to bury our heads in the sand any longer about what these beings have to say about how humans got here, our greater purpose, and how we fit into the cosmic picture. Not just that, but why various off-world species have apparently decided to set a more definite timeline for open contact allegedly, if these reports and accounts are to be taken at face value. Throughout this work in this series, I do my best to maintain some degree of objectivity, but alas, anything we study informs and changes us as well. It's the classic observer effect in quantum physics that suggests that what we observe, we inevitably affect, and it also affects us. Another quantum physics-based word for this is entanglement, which is also a practical everyday idea to consider why and where we become emotionally, sexually, or financially involved with anyone or anything, and why. We call this in our team, we call it spiritual fitness, and it's not really about any one religion. Rather, how you feel in your body each day and how much joy and connection you experience. And I know many of you watching this have some healing and reflection to consider. We all do from time to time. It's been said that life is the only game where you are free to choose, but you must choose what game you are going to play. Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. But you don't know until you choose. So I invite you to consider this information and choose carefully. So, who are we? What are we? Where do we come from? And why are we so drastically different than every other animal on this planet? And how do we rectify and evolve our human way of life to bring us within greater harmony with the ecosystem around us, while ensuring each person has enough food, water, and material resources to live a relatively comfortable and productive life? These are the challenges of our time. Challenges I think we are also uniquely equipped to help solve, otherwise we wouldn't be here. In other words, we all have a part to play. This isn't hyperbole. I believe it's physics. And if you think about it, in that sense, if you have a pulse, you have a purpose. Not only a purpose, but a true potential to maximize your genetic and spiritual destiny. Now, I know that sounds like new age sales coach bullshit to some, but the purpose of this video is to invite you to consider that that isn't just a statement as a sales pitch. It's actual, maybe, potentially, allegedly, energy physics and thermodynamics. In other words, you are the universe creating and experiencing itself in all the ways that it can. In that sense, look around you in nature. Everything works on feedback loops. System of exchange, balance, polarity, cause and effect. This is true of both our daily life choices and also the genes we inherited from a long line of survivors and winners called our ancestors. If you think about it, the only way you exist is because your ancestors survived literally everything this planet and perhaps other planets were able to throw at them. And I think that's a profound idea worth reflecting on. So, the next time you feel like a loser, I'm going to invite you to refer back to these ideas because the truth is, as far as I can see it, most people around you on the street are afraid, lost, in debt, trying to impress others, seeking love in all the wrong places, and are roped into situations they feel they neither understand nor have chosen. And this is a reason to be compassionate rather than judgmental. Against whoever you believe is oppressing or being oppressed, only through understanding do we transcend the current set of limitations. In that idea, we can now finally walk awake and aware in what I call the conscious cosmos, above none, below none, and also equal to all that we may encounter or experience, knowing that we are all choosing participation on some level, otherwise we wouldn't be here where we are now. So, what are genes? And what do so-called extraterrestrials have to say about the genes we carry as humans? Now, I'm not a geneticist, but I've studied the topic in some degree of detail, and to my mind, genes are like some sort of standard operating procedure and code that planets and consciousness uses to experience and catalyze physical evolution. In cosmic terms, energy that moves is energy that is alive. Energy that stops circulating becomes something else. In another sense, to be alive is to embrace change. Still, even in the changes we move through, we somehow always remain this stream of consciousness that weaves a cohesive narrative we call our life story. Cultivated over eons and proven in the harshest planetary conditions, our genes are the miraculous, self-replicating systems that make up our bodies and brains, yet most of us hardly think about them or their implications for living an empowered and attuned life. Not just our genes, but the conscious awareness behind our every movement and thought. That stream of consciousness that most of us feel that we are connected to, at least some of the time. In the next video, we're going to go deep into the extraterrestrial hybridization program and what I conclude the acknowledgement of their presence likely means being a human walking the planet at this time, especially as these ideas of hybridization are more widely circulated, including their expressed motives and potential ramifications. But this video is about helping ourselves first, and therefore our communities to better lay a solid, sober, sensible, and perhaps spiritual, but non denominational foundation to foster a simple understanding that we already have enough global material, resources, and abundance to provide for every human on the planet. So, what will money look like in the future? And what will you allow your money to buy? This is why we like the term conscious capitalism, because we get to take ownership for thinking about every dollar we spend with anyone as a vote of acceptance of behavior. So, how do we evolve beyond money being mistakenly viewed as a primary asset and more accurately see it as something that comes later in a resource sharing relationship? Also, how do we get smarter about helping those whose communities are in conflict or poverty? At the time of me making this video, it's become crystal clear to me that just blindly giving money to and through unaccountable organizations is not sufficient going forward. In fact, it's only likely to make poverty and violence worse. This is proven around the world today at a big picture here, a big level. Still, as I make this, anyone listening to this today clearly has access to internet and some degree of comfort, and you probably have the ability to read, which means you have the ability to learn at an above average pace. Why? Because leaders are always readers. In that, we can take a deep breath, relax, and as leaders of the new paradigm, rise above the noisy political chaos and act as informed and inspired problem solvers who strive to understand how to accumulate and distribute resources in ways that produce more prosperous outcomes for all involved. In that sense, and because of the fact that you are still here listening, I'm going to refer to you as a fellow leader of the new paradigm. These are the challenges of our time, and the map I'm about to share with you is helping my leaders create more empowered and evolved outcomes. But the problem is, some people aren't ready for what I'm about to share. They will simply find it maybe too triggering or too in conflict with their current understanding of reality. But as a leader, I'm not here for your comfort. I'm here for your growth and the healthy stability of the communities we call home. I want you to think about this series as a boot camp for your mind, and I layer information very specifically to help you build a type of mental immunity, like a Jedi Knight who cannot be easily influenced by unconscious or negative factors. And sometimes being a leader and being strong means getting in touch with your fears. But I suggest this can and should be considered part of your path to greater joy, fulfillment, and happiness. For some of you, you already know this, but for others, they truly struggle to rationalize or justify why choosing what makes them happy is the best path through life, even when it feels a little scary or challenging sometimes. And each day requires us to take this and shape this in new ways. With this idea, I submit to you a few graphics to help you visualize perhaps a more practical understanding of a more complete tree of relationships you may actually be a part of, and how by understanding it, you can unlock much more potential freedom and creative power within yourself and those around you. Keep in mind, this is also a summary of the various alleged extraterrestrial races I've studied through their contactees. Something I've come to believe is a bit of a cosmic belief system shared by races that have evolved beyond the bonds of gravity of their planet and travel the cosmos at will, at speeds far beyond light and in ways that aren't even constrained to linear space or time. Right, so taking a look at our screen here, I like to call this the one. This is a phrase that was taught to me through various what I would call extraterrestrial traditions, and how they explain how they see they fit into the cosmos. And this has been brought through various contactees throughout several decades. It's not just one source. And the idea then, in looking at this mosaic of the sun is a metaphor. Ancient Egypt used this as a metaphor as well. But if you look, there's a mosaic of panels, and the idea is that we are each fractal pieces of the one, and that we all each are a unique aspect of all that is. And maybe you've heard this type of language before, but how does this get applied into a transcendent type of physics that merges with some degree of what we used to call spirituality, and how that helps us to unlock, um, in a sense, the keys to travel the galaxy at will? Because there's a connection here with a species evolution and a level of understanding, and what information that their collective mind and collective creative science is possible of understanding and therefore developing into technology. All right, so let's swipe over to the next slide here. Take a close look at your screen. We're going to talk about several things in detail, and I think you're going to have a big picture here in a very powerful way that might help open up more creativity and more creative power for you, and even help you understand and share this in a way that others might find liberating as well. But first, this is not me trying to attempt to talk you into anything, to believe anything. I consider this as a physics experiment, a science experiment. Test it, try it out for yourself, and we'll talk about that as we go through this series and the experiments that I've tested in my life and what has worked for me and what hasn't. So, finally, today, let's talk about this map. So, if you look up in the top left, there's the sun, there's the one, same thing as this, understanding that we are all a collective part of this big picture. And if you go towards the bottom, we see a body, but we also see other connected ideas there as well. So, briefly, in just almost a bit of a fun summary, in the bottom left, you see a little alien with their spacecraft, and there are beings that alleged they were born on large craft such as one that was seen in Phoenix in the 1990s that was a mile wide. Over 10,000 people saw it. So there are craft, to my understanding, of all types in shapes and sizes traversing the cosmos, specifically, essentially reserved for those species that have transcended the idea of separateness and the idea of conflict-based understandings, and even some that aren't. Allegedly, there are cosmic conflicts. They do seem to be quite rare, but our humanity and our ancient genetics, I think, points to how some of our genetics came to this planet maybe several 100,000 years ago. But that's another story for another day. So let's look to the right. Okay, we see Earth, right? We see humans that okay, we identify with being born on a planet and being from a planet and are part of a species that is in essentially living on the surface of the planet. Now, there's also allegedly, according to many members of government who've been involved with some of these programs, they say there are species that live deep underground and deep underwater on planet Earth that are not human. I think it would be wise to consider what this means. And while there are various types of beings that I think in some ways they stay on the higher dimensional frequencies in the sense that they are not a match to species that are in high degrees of conflict. And so, almost like two radio signals, they're not able to be widely perceived or perceived together. So, looking at the top right of your screen before we talk about the middle of the screen here, if you look at the top right, you'll see that there is a maybe like a silhouette of a human, and then there's an eye. This is a category of beings that people occasionally encounter that do not claim to be from a spaceship, from another planet, or from our planet, above ground, below ground, whatever the case may be. There is a class of beings that do appear and manifest to people from time to time. These are consistent accounts. Some do align with religious symbology, but how do we really prove what each of these spectrum of beings are in any given case anyhow? Because, well, unless we meet an alien and they take us to their planet and we experience their planet and come back and say, yep, we went there, they are extraterrestrials because they're from another planet, or maybe they say they're from a spaceship and we see their spaceship. Well, there are stories and well-written accounts of contactees that have had these experiences that you can research, and I'm happy to provide references if you need them. But to be awake in the conscious cosmos, to understand the slices and dimensions and layers of things that um, people that some people seem to have greater ability to access, perhaps through their own spiritual development, perhaps through their own genetic traits or signals or various ability to perceive a broader degree of the radiomagnetic spectrum. There's all kind of various components that are at play here that I don't think humanity really understands just yet, but it seems like we're headed there in terms of trying to understand these things at a more broad and public level. So with that said, we let's look at the idea that top left, the one, right? We all stem from that same branch, from that same tree. Well, if that's true, why is there so much fighting? Well, there's various reasons why planets will facilitate timelines of conflict for spiritual evolution, for soul evolution, for genetic integrity, for toughening up perhaps genetic lines. This is where paradox reigns supreme, and that when we think about it linearly, when we think about it as being a planet, a person on a planet going through a war, we can't possibly conceive or understand why we would be born at such a time in such a way, right? And these are the mysteries of this school of thought that seems to be perpetuated by those that identify as transcending separate consciousness. So, finishing this up here, I'm going to talk about some language that might sound religious, but I think it's good to think of the idea that it doesn't matter what you call these things. I think these are aspects that are of our physical nature and how we build the bridge to our spiritual nature as it relates to these ideas. All right, so finishing up this introduction today, Top to bottom, we have the one, the oversoul, the soul, the mind, and then the body. And it's good to think of these as fractal branches because there are discussions about timelines and how timelines overlap and fit together or they shift. And it's, I think, a part of humanity's graduation into understanding multidimensionality and transcending the idea of being fixed or bound to linear timelines. And well, the oversoul is interesting because it represents a higher connection and a perhaps a more integrated integration with the idea of what it means to be one or acting uh, as a whole, and then how the oversoul, in a sense, sponsors offshoots of soul, mind, and body. And the mind is not the brain. The idea of mind is something you want to reflect on and what that means, and the fact that we're all connected to some degree of mentality. Anybody who has studied the subject understands that these evolved beings, they operate often telepathically. They often operate with a greater understanding that they are all part of one mind, and so are we. But depending on perhaps what genes are turned on or turned off, and it's a interesting question to ask why these genes may have been turned on or turned off in various phases of humans' evolution and history, and the various reasons why that may be. These are become fascinating questions that I'm not here to talk about today, but this map we will cover in future episodes as well and use it as an anchor point to really identify that, hey, anytime you're frustrated, anytime you're fighting the flow of your life, anytime you're feeling separate, you're not quite in alignment with these elements of energy that is sponsoring your presence here, is a great way to think of it. Because again, as I said earlier, without a pulse, if you don't have a pulse, you don't have a purpose. If you have a purpose, you have a pulse. If you have a pulse, you have a purpose. Otherwise, there's no just because you can't see the big picture you look at nature. I think it's a very safe assumption and wise assumption, um and something to test that there's no superficial systems in nature, including consciousness. What is consciousness? Why is it applied over the top of nature, and how does it fit into the animal kingdom? And what is consciousness? Why do we have it? How do we apply that in a way where we are good stewards of the planet we inhabit, right? And what does it mean to be a species that's preparing to depart for the stars? What do these other races want to tell us about our evolution at this time? So I think somewhere between the oversoul and the mind, there's what somebody calls the soul. And, we talk about it. It's probably the most common, one of the most common terms in spirituality. And everybody's, anybody who says it, somebody else says, yeah, okay, the soul. Okay. And we all just nod our heads like we know what that is. But who's ever even thought about what that even is? Either in ancient traditional ideas or modern physics ideas about what it means to be part of an energy system that, is all connected in that way. So, with this idea, we get to say, okay, if we're experiencing disharmony in our life, is it for a purpose? Because if it is for a purpose, then, sometimes taking on challenges is helpful. But if we take on too much distress, chaos, and disharmony, it affects our health, it affects others around us, and I would argue, we're not doing anybody a favor. And this is a bit of an anecdote, but it's something that I tested to some degree, and I'm going to speak it here maybe for the first time. It's been said by some of these teachers and some of these beings and some of these first contact specialists, if you will, or the people that are teaching these things through the contactee supply chain is a good way to think about it. People have been contacted, people receive messages either physically, telepathically. Our current science, as I make this video, doesn't recognize telepathy as a grounded form of science, at least publicly. But there's many people who come out of governmental projects and say, yeah, we used ESP and telepathy to do certain espionage or spy or understand what another country is doing. And these are professional people that made entire careers, 10, 20, 30, 40 years in these governmental bodies that deployed and paid these people to do such things. Psychic spies is another one. So to me, unless you've got your head under a rock, it's an understanding that it's become a modern understanding that these things are something. Are they a science? This gets to be the question, right? And how do these words fit into this? How do we understand this concept to access what might be locked regions of our brain, of skills and muscles that we've let atrophy as a race, as a society, as a culture, in these various things that, well, empirical science rightfully has to ask. uh, critical questions of, because if it's not repeatable and reliable, how do we use it to serve our communities and society? Otherwise, it turns into a religion, and superstition prevails and chaos will reign. So thank you for watching and considering these ideas. Please consider these as my best ideas to you, just for you to consider for yourself, to try on to see if they work for you, and arrive at your own conclusions through careful consideration. So there are links in the description that you might want to help your community take action on. And from there, I'll see you in the next video.